gentlemen, welcome back to another installment of the Rufus Rundown. We are back with a guest. It's Chris Costich. I met Chris working for the Brockton Rox this summer. Chris was our analyst. I was doing my silent reporting, so throughout a lot of the research we'd be doing and a lot of the conversations for baseball over the summer, me and Chris were in contact a lot and have stayed in contact. Played a couple rounds of golf too, or maybe only the one round of golf. Probably should have ended up playing more rounds of golf if we're being completely honest.
We really should have. It's too bad that you live on the other side of Massachusetts. That's the problem.
The South Coast. I mean, I don't know if Franklin's any closer, but I mean, New Hampshire's a hike no matter how way you put it, especially once you get towards the Plymouth State area. That's
Well, I'm not at Plymouth State right now.
No, yeah.
I graduated already, but regardless, still a hike from where I am up here in Lunenburg, Mass. But do what you can.
But yeah, obviously the weather pending. Hopefully next spring. Who knows if either of us are going to have more time by the time we start breaking more and more into the field.
Yeah, right.
I've started to notice that with my schedule, there is no schedule. It's just like, I guess you get days, but then like the amount of guys that come from jobs and stuff, it's something. It's certainly something. But yeah, the Brockton Rox, where me and Chris met. And then, Chris, you had worked for them a year prior to me getting there as well, too. You did the production, correct?
Yeah, I was lead technical producer was the official title. And, so funny thing about it, I originally applied to be the color analyst last summer, too. Not this past summer, obviously, but last summer. And Brett Schaubs, who's the play-by-play for them, for anyone that doesn't know, and is going to be now play-by-play for their semi-pro squad. He shot me back and said that they had already gotten a guy, and I said, yeah, I'm familiar with the program, might as well. And up to that point, I had only done like 4 months of work, to be honest, and I had zero clue, like, if I was really going to be any good at it. And then first game in, I was like, oh man, this is actually so easy. I could be doing so much more. And then kind of just wired in and just went right into it at that point. And, Brett was impressed enough to keep me on for another summer.
Yeah, I mean, the production, being able to see both sides of the production aspect. I mean, as I've grown up even doing cable access, which is, I thought that was something, like, directing that and working for cable access was one thing, and then working for the Rox, the silent reporter, being on camera was another. But now that I've seen like a Division I university and how they like put together the production and like directing, there might not be a more difficult thing in terms of like sports media and entertainment than like directing and producing, because of how quick you have to be, how perfect you have to be. Like any mistake that you make is literally being displayed to whoever is watching. So like with like commercial breaks and stuff like that, like that's one thing. I mean, announcers, like you really, I mean, as you get more comfortable being an announcer, not only are you going to get better at it, you can recover from certain things. Maybe not like a Tom Brenneman thing, but you can certainly recover from little hiccups throughout the broadcast. Like as a director, there's not much recovery process. So, but I also do think it makes me, at least for me personally, like it makes me a better broadcaster, understanding how the entire broadcast works and having a respect for like each position and like what each entails.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and that was the other thing too. Adam Wright, doing a podcast with him, Fumblerooski, for those that want to tune into that. But he was also on as a production assistant or cameraman, really. But he'll tell you too. Like I was pretty much like very into like the nitty gritty, like fine details of it all too. I wouldn't hound Adam, but I'd kind of be on his butt about like, hey, make sure you have the camera at this like specific point, and this is how I want you to zoom in on like the American flag for the national anthem. Stupid little stuff like that, but it's all that goes into making a good broadcast. And everyone wants to have the vision of, you want to make it look like you're watching ESPN or Nesson or Fox Sports or whatever. You want to make it look as professional as possible, so you can still get that. So you get that cred.
Yeah, I mean, like again, like once you start building resume reels, I mean, it was an internship for me, so obviously, like it's not an end goal to be staying there. It is obviously The goal to eventually move on and things of that nature. And again, production assistant, that label carries because it was smaller, obviously, with Brockton, considering it's a smaller team. Understanding what it is now, like there's cameramen, there's replay operators and stuff like that at the level that I've been able to get to as well too. So, I think, like I said, seeing all of it, especially from the directing realm and from the production realm. It's funny you mentioned that too, like with like telling people what to do. Like there was periods of time where I've been a director and I've said like please, like, and you see other directors do it. Like there is no please, and they're very short, and it's very like, they want it quick, and it needs to be quick because like it's live. It's a live production. People are watching it live. You need what you need. Like if you want it, you need to. There's no time for please. There's not really time for pleasantries. Like terminology is a big thing. Like fade, take, understanding that when you take the second it gets taken, or if it fades in the second, like fade 3, and then you wait, and like you're getting another shot. Like it's shot to shot. Like I've worked like a field cam too, where it's just like, all right, we're on your 3. We're gonna cut away, and like the director has the image in their head, and you're just listening to it. Like, and again, like TDing, kind of the same thing. You're just listening to like the orders. You can pitch ideas and certain things like that. Like TDing is even tough for me because sometimes I'll even just lock in on the game like myself, and like people will be talking, and like I'm almost like zoned out. And it's a weird thing to be kind of like shadowing as a TD the way that I've done it. But again, it's a production. It's entertainment at the end of the day. So when people are calling for things and things need to be done, like I don't want to be a dick in a sense, but like sometimes like you have no choice but to be like, if you have the image in your head, like there's and it's not being relayed, like sometimes you have to, and it's live and you only have a period of time to get something done. You kind of have to be almost abrasive in the way of like directing, like literally directing, like just directing traffic the way you're doing it for the production.
Yeah, and that's the other thing with Brockton too. You talk about like the communication aspect of some of the other places that you work, such as Holy Cross. And obviously at Brockton, we don't have headsets to communicate with each other. I mean, granted, we have like the radios, but you can only communicate so much to your guy, to whoever's on the third baseline. Hey, make sure you have this shot. It's more of, I kind of had to be like really hammer home what I wanted pre-broadcast before the game. This is what I want to see. You better show me it, or it's not like I'm gonna whip your ass or anything. But like, regardless, this is what I want to see. If you don't give it to me, then it's all right. We got next game. But by the time we got like halfway through the season that year, it was we were looking really, really good. And like I said, Adam can attest to it. That was a real fine broadcast we were running there.
I couldn't imagine doing it without headsets and stuff. I remember my first day at Holy Cross, like I was supposed to be shadowing just to make sure, like, because it's a bigger board, everything's bigger. Like I don't know about commercial breaks and like anything like that. Like I had done it, like I said, at a smaller level, and things happen a certain way. My boss has to step away, and he's like, "Can you just change between cameras 1 and 2?" And I did that for a couple minutes, and then I was like, "I've done this before. I haven't done it on this stage, but I've done it before." And I started calling out shots, started changing them. I'm like, "Hey, do we have that replay?" I did the replay, white play. It was very foreign to like the board I was working with. It's still a new tech. It's still a TriCaster, but like the size of it and what we had lined up, like I wasn't like totally familiar with it yet. But eventually ended up, kind of finding my way, and like I haven't like directed since. But that's obviously the goal to get there too, in terms of in addition to the broadcasting. But yeah, it's been a cool experience. And if I didn't have the experiences that I had with cable access, or like you would have it with Brockton, like obviously it's like you might not be an expert, but I think you have a leg up and you have an advantage over people who are just like, oh, like I'm trying to like entry level, as opposed to like what you're expected to know and what you're going to learn. Like we do have that advantage because we've worked in those environments before. And if you work in an environment without people that have headsets, it's only going to add to your ability to do it, in the sense of once you do and you can call out the shots you want live, like it's only going to take that production to the next level. I guess we can kind of segue it into working as an analyst. I guess we can kick it forward to that, what the experience was like this summer, and then obviously we can talk about the Fumble Rooski podcast too, the guys you do that with. But what was it like this summer working as an analyst? Obviously Brockton, we both know, wasn't the hottest team in the Futures League by any means, which again, that's another work in progress because we had to find positive stuff. Both of us being analysts in a sense.
That was the worst part about it. Brockton this past summer had the most losses in Futures League history. They at one point had the most losses in a specific month. They also had the longest losing streak in Futures League history. You base there's only a handful of players on that team could have said a lot of great things about, like guys like Jack Obert. I can't think.
Garrity was a stud. Yep. Garrity was a stud. Boslin was a stud.
Yeah.
Yep.
Guys like those types of guys. But like, I really enjoyed doing the analyst work though in general, because just looking at just the advanced stats and looking at that and getting like a bigger picture of even guys around the league too, that helped me a lot with figuring out like how these guys play type of thing without needing to go so deep into the film, because there's so much game film that you can go through on the Futures League network and whatnot, and it's hard to find a specific thing you're looking for, and it's not like, for example, like Manny Jr., right? First 5 games, he had the hottest bat in the freaking world. First 3 games.
We're throwing him fastballs.
And then, throwing him fastballs, and then they finally figured out just throw him straight junk in the dirt, and he's going to chase at it. But, it's those little intricacies. And the other thing, too, my experience being a catcher kind of helped me be like, okay, I kind of know what pitch should be thrown right now, or where to throw it, or having knowledge of tunneling. So for those that don't know what tunneling is, say you throw a fastball high in the zone, maybe you throw a curveball that top of the pitch is top of the zone and then it drops down type of thing. So that's kind of what tunneling is. You tunnel 2 pitches, but they go in different directions. And there's a lot of great clips of MLB pitchers doing the same thing, like Trevor Bauer throwing a 2-seam one way and then throwing a slider the other way, and they all look like the same pitch until they break. And that's the beauty of baseball too, is those little intricacies.
Yeah, the game within the game. And I mean, I would almost like more so than like the season itself and being on camera, like I almost took more, it was almost more fun for me to be able, especially the time that I was able to spend with like you and Brett up there, like we'd get there the 2-hour call time ahead of time. We just sit down, we just get in the computer, we get in the books. Jared Roderick would pop up too, and the 3 of us would just start throwing stats around, and we would dig deep. We would go
the wildest stats.
We would go seriously deep.
I never knew runs created was really that big of a stat until we saw Tyler Bastunis having like 30 runs created, and the next guy was like 10 runs created, and we were like, Jesus Christ.
He's hitting 600 through like the first 2 months of the season. And he was like accountable like individually, I think it was, because he stole bags too. He had speed and his OBP was ridiculous. And like I just remember his runs created, like for the individual runs created was like whatever was over 40%, I think, of Worcester's offense to that point. And like they were just running away with it. And I was like, well, MVP vote like this guy. And then you had guys like Nick Searcy, who just, graduate student. I mean, he should be doing against, especially the young kids Brockton had. That was another thing with Brockton, was how young they were.
Yeah.
But he would hit balls that wouldn't land.
You can't talk about the Brockton Rox without mentioning how young that roster was. Like, Shafalo was the oldest guy on the team, and he was a junior in college. And then he got called to the New England League, and we were like, well, damn, there goes our pitching right there.
It was the best arm in the staff.
Yeah, but I mean, you still had decent young arms in general that were either coming out of their first year of college or straight out of high school. Like the youngest of the 2 brothers, I can't think of his name. Right
now. Ryan McDougal.
Yeah, McDougal. Like guys like him or Ryan Garrity. They're not pitchers, but I'm just throwing names.
Yeah.
Right now. No. TJ Curley, another guy.
He can throw, man. He's only going to get better as he grows because he has stuff. That's the thing that they look for when they're younger, is like you have the stuff. TJ Curley by far has the stuff. Some of those guys don't. Some of those guys that were in there, especially later in the season, quite personally, no disrespect, they're out there. I don't think they have the stuff. TJ Curley, one of the guys, obviously with the strikeouts he had, has the stuff. Got hit hard in some performances too. Sometimes would struggle with control, but that's all a part of growing into your body, growing into becoming a more defined and developed pitcher. Overall, like I say, we have Marika Lizick too. Marika Lizick was again, I feel like they still did her dirty considering how many innings they threw her for, because like when they put her in the right role, she was really solid when they had to adjust to the slower speed, and she had control. She threw junk. She knew how to pitch backwards. Like, she really was pretty talented on the mound. I'll give her all the credit in the world for that. Like, I didn't, honestly, like, completely honest, was not expecting anything from it. I was kind of like, oh, this is just to sell tickets.
I wasn't expecting anything. You know, that TikTok stitch of like her throwing a pitch. I think it was her throwing a pitch, and Jose Batista taking it for a ride, and you know, that's like the only image we have going into that season. And you look up her stats, and there's not really a lot to look at because she didn't. I forget if she even threw when she was at Sonoma. And the previous school that she was at, she didn't even pitch. She was a catcher.
She caught at Riviera, yeah. So she was the first field player, first female field player in D3, and the first female pitcher in D2. I believe was her claim.
Yeah, and so we don't have any idea of what we're about to look at. And then she comes in that first game against Nashua and gets that kid looking on some outside changeup that caught the corner, and it's like, oh, all right, I guess we got something here. I guess this might not be as bad as we might think it's about to be.
Yeah, in her defined role, she was great.
And what's she doing now? Coaching in Japan or something?
She was coaching in Japan. I don't know. I just saw that she launched some sort of like baseball training program, but obviously, like, she's done more than enough to set herself up in her, if she wants to stay around the game. I think she's done more than enough to prove that she can hang. She knows what she's doing, and that, you know, she's marketable. She's a good person. She's a good conversation. She was a good person. Like, she was not full of herself by any means. She blended in. You would have thought that, like, having a girl in the dugout, like, dudes wouldn't have liked her. Like, she was very personable. She was like, it would appear that the dudes, like, did not resent having her around. Like, it's not that she didn't fit in. She didn't try too hard to fit in. Like, you know, she was one of the guys, which I think is why she will be able to find herself in the field for however long she wants to do it, whether it be in the media side of it or the marketing side of it, or if it's actually getting into coaching.
That was the other thing I was going to bring up too, is even if she doesn't get on the field or in the dugout or anything like that, she's still a solid media influencer for the MLB. And that's one of the reasons why she ended up leaving so early from the team, was because she was going to be she was doing something for the MLB during the All-Star weekend.
Yeah, then that's when she went over to Japan to coach the pony teams, the U.S. the women's ponies team that were over there in Japan for that the National World Series. And then again, like, they have the coach from the San Francisco Giants. I'm drawing a blank on her name. I think it's Alyssa Nakin. Is it Nakin or Nakin? Alyssa, I think it's Alyssa. Whatever it is, she was the assistant coach. She was one of the bench coaches for the Giants. I think she was actually the assistant head coach. And she's getting interviewed for the head coaching job. And, like, again, it's the whole Becky Hammon thing too, where it's like, if she can do it, let it go. Like, let her do it. Like, if she can do it, like, I'm in the business of winning. I'm in the business of, like, there is no, when it comes to, like, racism and taking somebody for their color of their skin, as opposed to that in a business that is revolved around success. Like, you want to make money, you want to win ball games. I'm in believing that, obviously, like, any type of prejudice is a bad business model. Like, if you're going to take someone else because of how they look or what they believe in, as opposed to someone who's going to give you more value for what you're going to pay in any field, not just sports, but more specifically sports, considering the high levels of the money that they're making. I don't like, again, it probably still does exist, but I'd like to believe that it doesn't, in the sense of these are high stakes, and you can't make decisions like based off of stuff like that, obviously, because you should be wanting to win. So if she puts you in the best position to win, and the Giants are a very, very good organization, has won a lot, let it rip. And then I think that should even give more hope to a player like Marika Lizick, or coach, when she gets into coaching, that she can make that level as well.
Yeah, and that's definitely in the back of the mind of the Giants. You know, it's as much of a media PR high point this is going to end up being, you know, hiring the first female manager in MLB history. That's going to be a huge media talking point. But the other side of it is, this better not be for your PR and whatnot. This better be for the right reason. And as you're saying, it should be for the right reason. And even for the woman that's getting hired or that's getting looked at, you know, she would want to be hired for the right reasons and not just because she's a girl, because it just diminishes everything that you work for. It makes everyone look bad, including the person that gets hired.
Well, I mean, like if you're a young lady trying to go pursue the field of coaching in a obviously male dominated sport, if they do just hire her because she's a girl and she struggles, now all of a sudden it's like no one ever wants to hire a girl again. So it's like it's your again, if you look at the Jackie Robinson situation of breaking the color barrier, I mean, so breaking a gender barrier, breaking a color barrier, Jackie Robinson was nasty. He was so good. He's a Hall of Fame baseball player. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't have stuck because the times were changing, the world as it was, but I think it helped that it stuck that more players came in to break the color barrier because of how good Jackie Robinson was. So if you come in and she has success, that sets a precedent for more people coming forward to be able to have that opportunity to obviously pursue coaching at that level. So I'll let you get into the Fumble Rooski podcast once we touch upon the NFL, which will be coming up. We'll be giving you guys some of our 3 picks apiece for the week against the spread coming up. And then we're going to have our 3 surprising teams in a positive, and we're going to have our 3 disappointing teams for the season as it sits right now, and our just general thoughts on the NFL season, because honestly, it's been a pretty good season so far. But segueing from obviously talking the Brockton Rox, we're going to cut into some MLB talk, which, again, the playoffs have been mighty exciting, Chris. And we've seen a lot of players, a lot of different things happening, players making a name for themselves, players continuing to capitalize on the name they've already made, like a name like Bryce Harper. But overall, what have your thoughts of the MLB playoffs been?
Definitely surprising. And, never mind the fact that you have the 100-win teams not even making it to the championship series. It's kind of just how we even got here in general. You have an amazing series between the Phillies and the Braves. It's a shame that the divisional series isn't 7 games, because that should be a 7-game series through and through. And you get to that's the joy of the playoffs sometimes, that sometimes you'll have 2 teams that are division rivals, and that's what the Braves and the Phillies were, obviously. And then you add on a little bit of extra spice to it with Arcia, Chirp, and Harper, and all the storylines coming out of that, like the locker room talk. You got the Astros and the Rangers, 2 AL West division rivals in the ALCS right now. And while this is recording, the Astros are up 5-2, currently in the bottom of the 6th. But I feel like the Phillies should win it all. I mean, they've already pretty much decimated the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks too. Never mind. Can't forget about the Diamondbacks. Obviously, it's a team that I don't think anyone really had going this far at all, and that's the joy of baseball. Sometimes is that it's such a random sport that if you can get a team that's just smoking hot like the Diamondbacks just were, or say the Phillies or the Rangers, like all these teams found some sort of way to just click. And the Astros too. We don't even need to go that far into the Astros, because this is what they've been doing for the last almost decade. What is it, like 7 straight years of making it to the CS now?
I believe 7 is the number, and again, I'm so glad they're doing it, because the whole sign stealing scandal thing is now just being disproven more and more, and they continue to look for even the craziest things, like, oh, I heard a trash barrel, or oh, they have electric shock sensors on. Like, everybody dug so far into that conspiracy for clicks, and just continuing to prove that, well, first of all, the only teams that everybody, if they were doing it, everybody was doing it. They just did it better than everybody else. That there's a reality to that. But I've talked about that at length in my podcast. Danny Picard wrote pieces on it, and I worked for Danny in the past, and he broke the story on it originally, and I had a relationship with Danny when he was doing that. He broke the story on the Astros doing it to the Red Sox in the ALCS the year that the Red Sox went on to win it and still defeated the Astros, and he continued the run with said story when he had multiple interviews with players saying, hey, pitchers are using stuff too. We had to find a way to combat it. They were using, obviously, the spider tack, and they were using goop, which was like dried Coca-Cola, bullfrog sun spray. But that's a whole different conversation. Like a lot of those teams you mentioned, the Ketel Martes of the world, and for the Diamondbacks, and Philly doing their thing with Nick Castellanos and Bryce Harper, Trey Turner. I still think one of the coolest stories running through the playoffs and the season overall is when Trey Turner was struggling, instead of booing him, they did the standing ovation. And not only have the Phillies, has Trey Turner not looked back, the Phillies have not looked back, and the entire city of Philadelphia at this point has not looked back because they have a lot of bright future ahead in all their sports. And again, it's like I can't stand the Eagles for whatever particular reason, but when it comes to the Phillies, there's something that I don't know. I do root for the Phillies. I do have there's a positive kind of influence that the Phillies have on me, but Bruce Bochy managing the Rangers. I grew up a Buster Posey fan as a catcher. I'm sure you can relate some form to appreciating Buster Posey growing up as a catcher. I had a great appreciation for Posey, so a great appreciation for Bruce Bochy as well. Clearly the guy can manage a ball club. The Astros just doing their thing, and overall it's been an exciting postseason. The whole thing with the format, though, with none of the 100-win teams making it, because I was hoping the Orioles would make a run. Personally, myself, again, catchers, Adley Rutschman, and multiple
The problem
other
with
names.
the Orioles, though, is that's the other thing too. Is you could say the same thing about the Diamondbacks. They do still have some like veteran guys like Loris Gurriel, but the Orioles I felt were just too young to make a deep playoff run compared to teams like the Phillies and the Astros. The Astros have been here before. The Phillies were just in the World Series last year, and they got a lot of veteran guys like Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Trey Turner. I feel like that's definitely a main reason why that the Diamondbacks are kind of fizzling out the way they are, and the run is just coming to a halt right now. And when I think of teams that have such a huge run and then it just comes to a screeching halt, like one of the first teams I think about is that 2021 Sox team. That they had the hottest bats in the world. Kike Hernandez could not be stopped, and then all of a sudden after after game 3 when they went up 2-1, and then I forget what even happened in game 4, but they didn't get a call the Sox way, and then all of a sudden they just went dead. They couldn't hit to save their life.
I mean,
and that's
my bad to cut you off there.
No, you're good. And that's kind of what we're seeing now with the Diamondbacks is their run is sadly coming to a halt, but you never know. That's why it's a 7-game series. Baseball's a funny sport. You never know. We could see the Diamondbacks rattle off 2 games in a row, but seeing the way that their ticket prices are right now, it doesn't seem they have a lot of faith.
I
don't know if
mean,
you saw that, Lucas.
No, I did not see the ticket prices drop severely after going down 2-0.
They're down to as low as $10.
Well, they got hot tub seats out there. I heard that if you like Southwest is opening up a thing where you can fly for $29 or less if you leave after 8 o'clock or leave at 7 before 7 in the morning. So maybe I'll catch a red-eye flight out to Arizona to get one of those hot tub seats out there. And they're on such a run too. And a lot of it comes down to pitching too, I would say. I mean, obviously the Phillies have some guys. It's a lot. I mean, the Astros have some guys. You have Scherzer for the Rangers as well too, which obviously really hasn't really panned out too well for them tonight.
He didn't have a good outing today. His outing, he had 4 innings, 5 hits, 5 runs, all of them earned, 1 walk and 4 strikeouts, including a bomb that he gave up to Jose Altuve.
So, who's just an absolute weapon, has been his entire career.
That's another playoff veteran, too. And that's the thing, Astros and Rangers are full of guys that have been here before. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager for the Rangers, Lowe, Jose, and for the Astros, Michael Brantley, Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez, Abreu, Tucker, Pena, Maldonado. I hate Maldonado, but he's a guy that's been there before, and geez, I mean, for how much I hate him and how much I believe he sucks, the Astros still believe that he's a good enough weapon to keep in their 9 spot to roll for the last 7 years or however long that he's been a part of that roster now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's been the same core for them for so long. I saw a thing saying, I saw an article. I wish I could credit the source because it was good. that Yordan Alvarez is becoming the next big poppy in front of our own eyes, and like I'm like, all right, no one's ever going to be David Ortiz, but Bryce Harper kind of having the same effect too in terms of he is clutch. I mean, those are some of the most clutch bats that I have seen. I mean, Bryce Harper, the whole GED story to go to a junior college, go back, get everything, get your education. 18 was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 16. Like the story, and then like no, and everybody just had the dirtbag look, the pretty boy face, and the flowing hair, and then he had the attitude with the Nationals. And got into a couple fights with Hunter Strickland, and there was a lot of people against him because they just, I don't know, they just don't like to see the Golden Boy get there. But he didn't take the Golden Boy persona once he started getting frustrated. He obviously was kind of up and down for a period there in Washington, but since he's found a home in Philly, this guy can play ball, and he's winning. Like Mike Trout's a talented baseball player, probably one of the best we'll ever see, at least in my lifetime. Bryce Harper is the same way. But like he's won. So even if he's not as talented as you think Mike Trout is, Bryce Harper and again Yordan Alvarez as well too. Like, man, some of these guys are making true names for themselves with teams that are continuing to find success. But Bryce Harper really standing out for me. And of course, you had the whole thing go on with Arcia as well, which made it out, and then he took it personally, gave him the stare down around second. Like he embraces everything that the city of Philadelphia really is. Bunch of dirtbags led by said dirtbag. I mean, if you look at it in that opinion, I don't look that down on Bryce Harper, but I'm immensely impressed with what he's been able to not only just do overall from a talent perspective and overall production perspective, but how he's able to do it in the big moments.
No, I definitely agree with that. And it's funny how Bryce Harper went from being like the most hated guy in the MLB, and now he's one of the most likable guys in the MLB right now. And it's because of his change to Philly. He's embraced that Philadelphia culture, like you said. He's shown up when it matters most. Even in that first year when the Phillies weren't going to do anything, he was still showing up, making highlight plays, walk-off grand slam. What regular season game that has no meaning because the Phillies were already out of it at that point, but they weren't even considered to be a playoff team prior to all the weapons that they gathered. But that was a packed crowd, I remember, and that place friggin' lit up. And that's the other thing too, is the Phillies, their biggest strength so far has been feeding off that home crowd, and everyone right now is saying that the bank is the toughest place to play, and that's the reason right there. It's the energy level that they're giving their guys to perform at the highest level.
Yeah, like I said, the standing ovation for Trey Turner and their season flipping around and getting into the dance. I mean, of course, Dave Dombrowski. I don't know why the Red Sox can't get general managers like Dave Dombrowski. As a Red Sox fan, it'd be great to have a guy like Dave Dombrowski. I'm sure we've never ran into the likes of a general manager like that can put together a championship team in a short period of time. But, if we do
That's the thing. It sucks that we have these general managers like Dombrowski, and he performs at a high level, and then we figure out, he's not doing what we actually need him to do. I mean, here's the thing about Dombrowski. The sad thing about all those World Series that was the greatest one, probably the greatest assembled baseball team we will ever see.
One of them, considering what the 100 win teams did this year. Yeah, absolutely.
They only lost 3 playoff games that entire postseason. And every single game, you did not think that they were out of it at all. Even when they were down 4-0 against the Dodgers in Game 4, and you're like, oh, here we go again. Like, slow start again. And lo and behold, granted, the Dodgers also shot themselves in the foot that year because Dave Roberts kept going with the analytics, but that's another thing too, is that we saw with the Blue Jays how analytics more times than not kind of shoots you in the foot, and I love analytics. I love the sabermetrics. I don't mind it at all, but there comes a time where you need to have a feel for the freaking game, man. You can't. I get the whole analytics of you got to take your starting pitcher out once you get to like the third time through the order, or whatever the hell it is. Like that's how much I don't care about it, because it's such a stupid thing to live by. Because if you got a guy that's dealing out there, let him go. Save some arms. Why do you have to feel the need to take out your starter and throw in a reliever that, for all we know, is probably all jittered up now? He's a little nervous. Oh man, now I didn't even think I was gonna come in because it's a 5-0 game, and now he's all nervous that he's got this 5-run lead, and all of a sudden it's gone because you couldn't just leave a starter out there
and you
finish the job.
They paid Barrios a ton of money to come in there and be an ace in a game like that, to do the work. And I mean, again, like, you might, and I'm not saying it has to be like set in stone all the time, but like when it comes to the regular season, yes, go with the analytics. If the analytics say pull them. You know, you're in it for the long haul. If it's working, it's working. The projections are the projections. But the second you start getting into the end of the season, games that matter, sometimes you just have to know. You know when you know. You know, and like if you know,
Yeah.
I guess you can make jokes about it too. And if it's cliche, go all the way down. But like sometimes it just you have to turn it off, and you just have to know when to stick with a guy. You have to know when. And again, like you look at analytics, maybe they would have told you to take Pedro Martinez out in 2003. Maybe they wouldn't have. I don't know what it would have been in that specific situation as an example, but overall, sometimes you have to just know when to just go with your gut. This feels right. This is my guy. We're gonna roll him, and that's it. You're gonna get crushed either way if it goes wrong. But at the end of the day, I'd rather go down swinging knowing I made the decision myself than some computer projection telling me and a computer being wrong, and knowing that I will take blame myself for keeping him out there, saying, I'm not going to hide behind the analytics. I'm not going to say, the analytics support X, Y, and Z, and that's why we did it. No, I wanted to keep him out there. He got shelled at Tommy, or I wanted to pull him. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't hide behind it anymore, and that's what I would want more of in terms of that sense. And I'm not saying every coach is going to do it. Every coach specifically has done it, but that's my way of seeing it, where it gets into those moments like, I don't want it to be anybody's fault. I want it to be my guys. I don't want it to be a computer. I don't want it to be me. I have trust in my players, my guys, and they got to go get it done. I like keeping it in the back of my mind and in certain situations, but at the end of the day, in those moments, they're making their names in the postseason. There's, like we've mentioned, many of them. There's moments to be made. There's the Kurt Schilling bloody sock game, like, analytics probably going to tell you to pitch an injured guy. So, like, there's certain moments, and by the way, Kurt Schilling, scumbag. But,
yeah.
but just, like, those situations, they weren't made in a computer projection. They were made because guys had nuts to go out there and do what needed to be done, and it came out on the other side.
Yeah, and that's obviously the problem, too. And, the whole Pedro thing is just the analytic. Did you say the analytics probably could have said?
Yeah, he probably shouldn't have kept him in there in 2003, but
he was well over 100 pitches. That was like the beginning of him getting rocked, and the crowd was getting back into it. That's when you need to make the change, because especially if your starter's over 100 pitches in a game 7, and once you see that the wheels are starting to fall off, then you can jump ship. But like, you just gotta let your guys go, and that's the whole thing. If we were to see more starters go longer, then you'll see a more open bullpen. More arms will be available at that point. Take back to that 2018 year, that 18-inning Game 3 World Series. Nathan Eovaldi comes in to the 12th, 13th inning. Saved so many arms. Never mind him just shoving for like almost a full baseball game
till 4 a.m.
But it was the fact his heroics isn't in him pitching almost a full ass game. It's him saving his team's arms, because you go into the next game and the Sox didn't have a great start to Game 4. Who knows who's available for Game 4 if Eovaldi doesn't do all those innings?
Yeah.
That's another veteran that's on the Rangers right now that had an incredible Game 2.
Oh, dude, some can, some can't. You remember in The Last Dance, they were talking about like some can do it, some can't. Like Michael Jordan, like he can, when he's healthy, just look, he's got stones, man. He's got stones. Just another name out there that just, like when he just shows up, and when it's a big moment, if he's healthy, he's gonna shove, and proving it yet again in this postseason run with the Rangers. And again, it's another. Yeah, I've never been opposed to the Rangers. I mean, they're still looking, I believe, hunting for their first World Series still, because they had that loss to the Cardinals back in the day, the David Freese-led Cardinals. The Joe Buck, the Giants won as well. So the Neftali Feliz back in the day. Now they got Aroldis Chapman. They just love having fireballers out of the pen back in the Michael Young days, the Josh Hamilton days. My goodness, what a little error they had there. Ron Washington coaching them. Yeah, I mean, my childhood. I mean, that was like MLB 10 to MLB League 12. The show that was certainly that was right in my ballpark. But like I said, overall, I'm interested to see what they'll end up doing with the format too, with these 100-win teams. Kind of get back to that too with the games. I've seen a couple of different things.
A talking point that I saw on Twitter, at least, was people saying that maybe they should shrink the amount of games down, because those 100-win seasons don't mean anything now. But it's you also have the same argument of, okay, well, sure, the regular season might not matter at that point, but playoffs still matter. You still got to show up. The Orioles can get all this rah-rah about being a 100-win team, but they were just too young for their own good. And that's just the long and the short of it. It's the same thing if a team, I mean, granted this is hockey, but say last year with the Bruins, they had a historic season, but the problem is you have old-ass Bergeron, old-ass Krejci on your top two lines that are literally about to retire within the next 2 months. It's, granted, the Bruins had an amazing depth in general that year, but you can only go so far when you have guys that are either too old or too young. Granted, you can still make do with that, don't get me wrong, but experience at the end of the day is going to by far be the deciding factor. Even the Astros were making some playoff runs early on in the 2010s, or more the middle, but they were still making the playoffs. Granted, they weren't making it very far, but they were still making it and making their name. And then once they finally got to that 2017 series and got it done, granted, amid scandals, but that's just an example of a team that battled out through the postseason the years prior. They finally got their opportunity, and they took advantage of it. They got the job done, and it's because of their experience.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be the right experience, right? Like, if you have a lot of young guys and a lot of old guys that are not on the same page, that are 10 to 12 years apart, it's going to be kind of like the old, okay, boomer type response to them, right? You need to have the right mesh of people that are respected. You need to have the hierarchy. You can't just have older players in there that are old, that have experience, that don't have the ability to voice it, to lead in a certain way. You just need the right personalities to mesh in that clubhouse to be able to rally around. Clearly, these teams have found that and have solid managers that are leading them as well. And you mentioned that Bruins thing. I mean, in that instance where they brought older guys back in, and this might be the case with the Rangers and Scherzer in terms of like being able to look at the two, right? You have veterans that have done it before. I still think underachieved overall, but still, you had veterans that had done it that were dealing with injuries that they brought back into the lines. They rotated back in. That took away from guys that maybe were playing well, younger guys, different guys that were playing well up to that point, but they were like, hey, no, they've done it before. We're going to bring them back into the fold, and it totally flipped it the other way. So the Rangers win the first two games of the series, and again, they very well could come back and win tonight, but as it stands right now, are down. They bring Scherzer back after not having pitched since September 12th. That might be something that totally flips the momentum too if Houston can take two in Texas now. I mean, well, still in Texas, but in the ballpark in the ballpark in Arlington, because they lost two in Houston. Or no, they lose. Yeah, they lost two in Houston, and they're in the ballpark in Arlington right now, right? Or am I totally flipped on that? I could have. Am I crazy to think?
No, they're in Arlington right now.
They're in Arlington. Okay, so they dropped the first two at home. Now they very well could beat Scherzer, and then they're just one away from tying this up and home field being back in their advantage. So again, like to your reference of the Bruins team, that could very well be a similar aspect. But again, in terms of like how you break down these teams, I mean, the MLB is not going to get rid of. I think this actually, they've talked about expansion, which would kind of like offset this if you did expansion once again. Which I think that considering the league was growing this year, the league did grow in viewership substantially. The pitch clock was a tremendous. As much as I didn't like it. A lot of the things they've done for the pace of the game has been tremendous. They aren't juicing the baseballs. Offense is still a thing. The bases being a little bigger. The pitch clock.
Offense is still a thing because they got rid of the shift. That's why.
Yeah, the shift as well too. So the rules and changes that they made, I think, have been positive, and that's why the game did grow again this season. They probably brought some people back, and then you could look on top of that to continue to build. But expansion is a possibility. But again, I'm maybe old school. You said that the DS should be a 7-game series. You very well could get rid of the wild card. You could.
No.
Yeah, well, maybe not the wild, or get rid of 2 of the wild cards, and you very well could do. One plays the wild card, and 2 plays the 3 in the DS. You do a 7-game DS set, and then you just go to the CS and you go to the World Series. But there's a couple, and then I saw one too where you can keep it at 3 games for the wild card. But you do game 1 day, then a travel day, then a doubleheader, and then you have there was too much time between those games. Those teams got into a rhythm. They were in the playoff rhythm so much. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses here, but from this outlook at least, it was those teams were in such a rhythm of play, travel, rest, play, travel, rest, play, and then all of a sudden you're just grooving. Now you're in the rhythm, and this team's trying to adjust to your rhythm. You're already rolling. They're in motion. So. And the 100 teams couldn't keep up with that. I mean, some of them obviously not being the only reason that they went down. But overall, like, there's a couple of different answers. Like you said, shortening the regular season. I've been a big fan of that for a while. You have to make the regular season mean more. Relegation's another one for me. I'd love to see some relegation. But, hey, I mean, I'm open to all ideas here in terms of it. But it could be a fluke, but...
Yeah. That 14 playoff you were talking about, that's what they used to have.
Yep.
Like when the Sox were winning those World Series in the early 2000s or in the mid 2000s, that's what they originally had, was that 14 playoff. And I will disagree with the 14 playoff through and through, because obviously you have the division winners and then you have the one wild card. Look at the other sports. You have the division winners. And then for football, you had the 2 wild cards. And then because of COVID, they went to 3 wild cards. But baseball depended too much on you winning the division and having that one open slot. I feel like is just so redundant, to be honest, because... Like I said, baseball is such a funny sport that anything can happen, and you could have the Diamondbacks and the NLCS, or what's another team that?
Well, the Nationals run was something. The Nationals run to the World Series was something.
That's another run. I like what they have done with the playoff expansion, that they've slowly now gotten us to that 3 wild card. The problem is that the wild card, now you've taken away the importance of the wild card game by not having it a 1-game series. You made it a 3-game series, and sure, it's to get more money. You want to get more money, make it a 7-game a 7-game division series, because that's what's going to drive the money, especially a 1-game wild card playoff is especially going to raise that money. You kidding me? That brings eyes. Oh, winner take all? Just 1 game?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm tuning in for this. I'm tuning in for this shit. You kidding me? Part of my language, but regardless, you have the 1-game wild card playoff, and then you go right into a 7-game series. I would love that. Imagine if we had the Phillies and the Braves this year, 7-game series, divisional series, because that's just how the playoffs lined up. There's nothing you can do about that. Or 2018, the Sox and the Yankees face off in the divisional series, and we only saw 5 games out of that, where you would want a Sox-Yankees series to be a 7-game series. Anyone in their right mind would want 2 really good teams, never mind them being good teams, but hated rivals, to go 7 games. That's what drives the money. Is those, especially those outlier stories, you know. It's the greatest rivalry in sports, and you want that to be a 7-game series. You want that added dramatic effect, and I think that's kind of what we've lost a little bit, especially with going to the 3-game wild card, is we've lost that dramatic effect.
The other thing I looked at too, of course, the year that the Red Sox did win that World Series and play the Yankees, I was present for David Price getting shelled, which actually gave way to our bullpen becoming the most dominant bullpen in the playoffs because they actually pitched so many innings that game. They actually got into a good rhythm. That either here nor there. The other thing that I've also pitched to is we have East and West conferences in the NBA. You have the AFC, NFC, which is different. But if the MLB is now done away with the pitcher hitting in the National League, the DH is all around, you very well could restructure and have an East and West instead of having the divisions. So you could have the top 7 teams from each conference in per se, like East and West Coast, which would change the amount of like travel and road trips and stuff like that. In terms of watching games, you'd be able to watch more games in your time zone. There'd still be road trips that would require that, but you could do conferences more so than an AL and NL. You could do East versus West, and that would kind of change, like, not having an emphasis on division winners, but it would allow it to just be more wide open. But then again, when you have teams tanking the way that the MLB does, which you don't even need to tank, like they just take the revenue deals and just don't spend any money. Even the Red Sox are doing it at this point too, just continuing to spend less and less, even though their revenue is ridiculous because it changes obviously how much money they can make. That's another pitch that I think I would have too, is like maybe we start doing conferences. It's not something traditional baseball people want to hear, but if you told them that, we would know that shifts would have been a thing, and then shifts weren't going to be a thing, and that there was going to be a pitch clock, and you would have mandatorily have to face 3 batters and all that stuff. Like, obviously, the game has changed, and the game has to adapt, and I'm glad that it did. I think it adapted a little bit quicker. Not quicker, but it adapted too much altogether. They did too much at once because they failed to adapt at a pace that other leagues had, and that's why they suffered. But I'm glad it worked out, because it was very well at a point where if they didn't do something, it was going to continue to hurt the game. But if what they did not work the way it did, would have also hurt the game. It would have sent it backwards. So I'm glad that it all worked out in a way, but I think that the playoff formatting is something that they're going to have to take a peek at, but hopefully they're as proactive with that, or more proactive than they have in the past, and hopefully it works out the way that a lot of the changes that they made going into the season played out. But I'll close up baseball there because we're getting close to the hour mark. I'm sure we could go on all day about baseball. I mean, we talked about the
we went a while for that. Jeez.
Brockton Rox, I think we hit off like 20 minutes right off the bat. So I'll have this chopped up and segmented up. But we'll get into football now, which again, bread and butter right now. It's just right smack in the middle of the season. So we'll just start overall with we'll stick with 3 up, 3 down, and we're gonna do it. And I guess we kind of have a part 2 of the 3 up, 3 down with the weekly pick'em. We're gonna have 3. We're gonna pick both pick 3 games, and we're gonna see against the spread going into this week, and we're gonna see who can come out on top. And obviously, I can react to that in the next episode. And finally back in a more consistent swing of posting. And while we're at it too, I'll link all your socials and stuff. The Fumble Rooski will be able to. I'll throw it all in the description. We'll plug it all. But overall, 3 up, 3 down. Not particularly power rankings, but teams that have surprised us so far, and also teams that have disappointed us. Which for me, this is kind of it's kind of a weird one because like there's some teams that that might be bad, but like we were still expecting to be bad, but have been substantially worse because like you look at teams like the Bears and the Panthers, like. If you were to power rank them, yes, they are some of the worst teams in the league by far. But have they disappointed me? No, they haven't disappointed me because I kind of expected that. Some people might have expected more from those teams, but just that being noted, that's kind of how we're looking at this. So for me, I'm going to start off with the 3 disappointing teams. My first disappointment was the New England Patriots. Chris, I'm sure you share
Yeah,
My opinion with that there.
that's gonna be mine as well.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't expect them to be good. I did not expect them to be this bad. Like,
The thing that sucks as a Pats fan is that you expected, you saw everything wrong with last year, and the main denominator was Matt Patricia, right? You got some rocket scientist, defensive coordinator that's calling the offensive plays, and if you know football and you follow football enough, you know that defensive-minded guys are going to be more conservative. And that was a huge problem with the Patriots. They were too conservative last year. They almost never took many shots. 3rd and 8, they're running little halfback slip screens, and that doesn't cut it. You got to take your shots when you're given the chance. You got to take your shots, and that's what the Pats weren't doing last year. And so you bring in Bill O'Brien, and you get rid of Jonnu Smith. You bring in Mike Gesicki. And in my eyes, when we brought in Bill O'Brien and we upgraded a little bit at tight end, I was like, well, geez, man, we're going to have Aaron Hernandez, Robert Gronkowski 2.0. Not exactly to the extent that they were during 2010 to 2012, but we'll get it pretty damn close. And then you have 2, I wouldn't say really good weeks, but really competitive weeks against some really good teams. And that drove the hope up a lot. And then you had the Jets game, and my hope didn't really go down from that game because it's a divisional opponent. Divisional opponents are always going to be tough, and this isn't going to be the Brady era where where they would just run through everyone. You're going to be in for a tough matchup, and especially with how good the Jets defense is right now too. Especially that win against the Eagles this past weekend, they freaking shut everything down. And especially with the injuries that they had in the secondary. And then you go into Dallas and you think, well, we might not win this game, but it should be competitive. And then they get their shit kicked in. And it's like, what? Okay, all right, this isn't great. This is the worst game we've seen from Mac, but can't get much worse than this. And then the Saints game happens, and it's like, you gotta be kidding me.
I was there, man. I was watching the Zappy chance.
Yeah, I saw your snap stories, man. I had a buddy from Plymouth who was also a Saints fan that was at that game. But like everything, just for how bad Mac is one thing. You can't get away from that. Mac has been really bad, but at the end of the day, it also comes down to Belichick being the GM and his old ass his GM duties need to be revoked, but the problem is that if his GM duties get revoked, he's not going to want to coach at New England anymore. And he's going to go somewhere else where he can rule over the entire organization. And that's been a huge problem. And granted, like, he stacked up the defense pretty well. You get guys like Christian Gonzalez, you sign Matt Judon, you get Jawan Bentley, you draft Keon White, and you bring in Jabril Peppers. I love Jabril Peppers, by the way. He's a dog. I freaking love him. But it seems like you're all set for the defensive side because A, you were already all set last year, and B, you basically reloaded this year on the defensive side. And then offensively, all you really did was you signed Juju to the same amount of money that you should have signed Jacoby Myers. And you signed Mike Gesicki, who hasn't really done a whole lot. And on top of that, you draft 2 receivers in late rounds that make 2 plays that aren't necessarily their fault early on in the season, and now they're just healthy scratches from here on out for basically no reason, but Bill just having a stuck-up pride and ego. Just everything that the talent, they can't play from behind, they can barely play from in front. The thing is, like, all of Pats Nation is is kind of on the tank for Caleb Williams bandwagon, but no one in the NFL actually tanks. No one in any sport really tanks because the players and the coaches out there are fighting for their freaking lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's the organization that tanks, not the coaches or the players. So you know that the Pats are still going to rattle off I'd say the Pats are still going to rattle off 5 wins at the very least. But no, they're not going to come close to tanking for Caleb Williams.
There is a lot of teams worse than the Patriots, and that is saying something.
But that's what a lot of people forget, too.
There's a lot of teams worse that are worse off than the Pats. And when I was up there, I sat next to a guy who goes, I've watched these Patriots for 23 years, win one of the greatest dynasties ever. And he got up and he's like, but I have seen enough today and know that I'm happy enough. I'm not bitter. I'm happy, but I've seen enough today. He got up and left the third quarter. And as a Saints fan, it was happy for me. And that's another team that, again, I'm biased. It's not one of my disappointing teams, but they're certainly underachieving. But
I will say one last thing before we move on to the other teams to finish off my Patriots rant. The biggest thing to come out of this too is that the rumor is circling right now. You want to know what that rumor is? Lucas, you want to know what that rumor is?
What is that rumor?
Robert Kraft is pissed. He is pissed right now. For good reason. You just got done with a 20-year dynasty, and this is what Bill Belichick cooks up for you? Are you kidding me? Especially with the way Mac's rookie year was? What? I would not be surprised if we have such a bad year that Kraft just pulls the plug on Belichick. But that's the thing is, are you going to pull the plug on the entire thing or give him the ultimatum of, hey, we're going to pull you from GM. You can still coach, but if you don't, then get out of here.
I totally agree with the revoking his GM duties. It's clear that they have been out-talented. They've been out-drafted. They've made countless mistakes in personnel departments. They are not the players that they have that are talented. The discipline is not there the way it used to be. Clearly, his GMing, I guess that's a verb, his general managing has affected his ability to coach. He's doing both, and he was so long. He would bring in, the Parcells. If you want somebody to cook, you ought to let him buy the groceries, and it worked for as long as it did. And the Patriot way became a thing, and he bring in guys that maybe didn't seem as talented, but did certain things right. But now that I think it's affected his ability. He's been outclassed in terms of the talent department, in terms of bringing in talent, in terms of drafting so much that it's harmed his coaching. And I totally agree that he probably still coach in this league, but I don't think the GM thing right now is something that he can maintain, that he can continue to do. So I totally agree with you there. And Kraft being pissed, it wouldn't shock me because, I know there's a lot of stuff that people didn't put their name to. Seth Wickersham wrote the report and unnamed sources, but people in the media know you can and can't name sources. And while I might not believe everything that took place in all of those stories, I do believe that at the end of the day, Robert Kraft wants to win. And I think the whole thing where, the whole get rid of Garoppolo, Brady didn't want Garoppolo around, and Kraft sided with Brady, and it created a rift with Belichick. To an extent, I do believe that there's been kind of a disconnect there since Bill let Tom leave. Of course, or not just let him leave, but was kind of the reason that, one of the reasons that, kind of pushed Brady away. I do believe that there is some of that. I'm sure that being around Bill for that period of time, it's tough to do.
Yeah, that's the whole reason why Brady even left to begin with, is because Bill wasn't doing enough to bring guys in. Brady bitched and moaned about bringing in AB and Josh Gordon. Granted, those two obviously didn't pan out after 1 week. But what does Bill do then? Oh, let's get Mohamed Sanu. Past his prime, Mohamed Sanu. We're not talking about 2016 Falcons Mohamed Sanu. We're talking about 2019.
Never really had a prime. He had a good year.
Regardless, he was still good for the Falcons. And for some reason, we decided it was a good idea to sign him on. And Julian Edelman is just a slot guy. He was a great, amazing receiver for what he did for the Patriots. But you can't consider him as a true number one. He's just a slot guy that made it big, and that's really the whole. On top of that, too, Philip Dorsett, another just a slot guy. That's all he was. I can't even tell you who else was the receiving core on that team. It's not even coming to mind because that's how garbage it was.
But yeah,
and
my
don't
bad.
even get me started on the tight ends too, because they were just Devin Asiasi. That's the only name I can give you.
I think what else do they have? One of the Hollisters, right? One of the Hollisters was there, but that
Oh,
was
actually, I think Jacob Hollister and Benjamin Watson also came.
Yeah, Ben Watson came back from the Saints, which was again, whew, well, he was up there in age. My closing points with the Patriots are that they're going to have, if the most cap space coming up, if not one of the highest open cap spaces. They're going to have a legitimate draft pick, and they're going to have to make a legitimate decision at the quarterback position. Mac is not the answer. That is prevalent. Is he the problem?
I won't go that far just yet.
I don't think Mac's the answer, but I don't think he's the problem either. I think they could do more in terms of, like, you look at his rookie year. I mean, I feel bad for him. Because every other young quarterback in the league that shows any form of promise in their first 2 years, they use all the money that they could be paying to him, but because it's on his rookie deal, they bring in weapons around him. They did not surround him with anything. They spent poorly in their off seasons to build around him, and they did not give him weapons that he's been able to make good use with. That they've hurt his confidence, put him in bad situations with coaching and the coaching staff. But at the end of the day, decisions have to be made and things have to change. I don't think that the Patriot way is going to continue to exist in the way that it has been pitched to this dynasty and to this fan base and to the NFL for over the last 20 years. It no longer exists in that way, and if things don't change, you're going to continue to see the truthfully abysmal failure that has been the Patriots franchise this season. And again, you've seen like the downward trend even since you had a promise. I mean, I don't know how you trend so far badly after having such a promising rookie season out of a quarterback that you drafted in the first round. I think they've scrambled their opportunity to build around Mac, and I don't think he's a true Super Bowl winning quarterback, but I think he's a playoff caliber quarterback when surrounded by the right pieces, and they just we're unable to put that around him, and I think it is past their period of time where they can do that. But now you just have to understand that if you go quarterback again, it might not be a true situation where you can actually build around a quarterback, because if you couldn't do it with Mac, what makes you think you're going to be able to do it with the next first rounder? That's where I'll close out the Patriots, because, good Lord, there's so much to talk about a team that has been so bad. So my next disappointing team, the Bengals have been disappointing to me. I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals have certainly been disappointing. He got hurt early. And this is something with Burrow, not particularly his fault when he got all jammed up with the knee injury, but then again, I mean, once that happens, injuries are obviously a part of the game. Once it pops up, though, the health becoming an issue. But the offensive line clearly an issue for the Bengals. But they've been able to rattle off 2 wins in a row, and that was a solid win over the Seahawks, as much as I wanted the Seahawks to cover the spread in that game, where may or may not have been rooting for the Seahawks very hard at the end there because it looked like they were actively trying to lose the game. Either way, they've surged back in. The Browns' defense was legit. I think Burrow was coming back from the injury. Then the loss to the Ravens. Been in a lot of close games. That Titans one was the one for me where it was like, oof. And then for a period of time, the Cardinals hung tough, but it doesn't look like the same. I mean, other than that, Cardinals win with Jamar Chase. It truthfully doesn't look like the same team we saw get to a Super Bowl, and we saw to start to really think would challenge Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs for this next AFC dynasty in a way.
Yeah, and go back to that Joe Burrow injury. He got that pretty. When did you get that during preseason?
Almost before preseason games took over. I think it was right before true training camp started.
But my original thought was he's just getting back. Maybe he got back too early. Maybe he's just got to rebuild that chemistry again, because that was a big thing that I was saying about the Bengals last year with their early struggles, that they were working with a new offensive line, and you can have the entire rest of the offense have all the chemistry in the world, the receivers, tight ends, quarterback, the running back. They can have all the chemistry in the world, but if your O-line isn't on the same page, then you can just throw everything out the window and once the O-line finally figured it out, that's when the Bengals started to do good again. They started to pick up wins, and they started to make that deep playoff run that they were predicted to do. This year, I don't even know. I just think that Burrow came back too early, and now we're at the point of no return where if they lose the next two, now you're in trouble. Granted, in our most recent episode on the Fumble Brewski podcast, CJ Medeiros did say that if they were to lose the next two, then they should just shut Burrow down until he gets healthy again. I would have just shut him down a month ago, before the season started. Get that guy healthy. There's 17 weeks or 17 games in the season. You might as well be in it for the long run instead of just throwing your hurt quarterback out there to the wolves and just let him run. It's not good for the confidence. It's not good for health. And it just seems like Burrow his knee just that leg just looks worse and worse every week. And you just wonder when they're going to pull the plug, or I feel like they won't pull the plug if they do lose the next two, but if they do get to that 6-7 loss column, though, they're going to pull the plug.
I mean, 49ers, Bills coming up. Able to beat the Cardinals, Seahawks. That Titans loss is the one that I think stings the most because they beat the Rams. The Browns and the Ravens, the two divisional matchups right away. Like, if you bench him for not bench him, but you sit him for those, right? You sit him for those. Maybe you sit him for the Rams game, but maybe you don't sit him for the Rams game. You get those first 2 weeks off. They hung tight with the Ravens. They got blown out by the Browns, so clearly that might have been too soon. And I don't know what you would have been going into with that game. If it was, I think Jake Browning was that the guy that they were going to go to, the former Washington guy there. And then again, maybe he makes the return healthy against the Titans on the road. So you go Titans, Cardinals, Seahawks wins. Maybe you get one of those first 3 games to win either way with the backup. And then you have him healthy and you're back in content. You're still with the same record, but you got a completely healthy Joe Burrow going to these next couple games. Again, it just doesn't seem like they have the same swagger that they once had. It looks like they've been kind of disconnected. And again, as Zach Taylor continues to call plays, obviously defenses have more and more film and they'll respond that way. But they haven't had the same energy, in my opinion, and that's why it's been disappointing. It hasn't been the same Bengals team that I think we've been so used to, and the same energy and the same Joe Burr, same confidence that we have from those guys. It hasn't been there for me to see. I don't think it's been there for them on the field, and that's why they've been one of the more disappointing teams for me in terms of where I expected them to be. I'll let you. I don't know if you agree with me there with the Bengals in the second with your second pick, but if you do have a second pick, feel free to let it rip.
No, I completely agree with the Bengals. That Pats and Bengals were definitely going to be my top two.
I'll let you lead with your third now if you want there before we get into it. We might even have the same third, but you can lead away with your third and final disappointing team.
I don't know. I want to say the Broncos, but I just say the Broncos so much that just it's just I don't want to say it anymore. So we'll say Broncos for a third, but I'll give you a fourth. I'll say the Vikings.
Yeah.
I don't want to say last year was a fluke because you can really tell how good a team is by how they handle tough situations. And the Vikings, what did they have? They won 11 games. All 11 games that they played that were within one score, they won.
Mm-hmm.
That
never gonna happen again.
Definitely never gonna happen again. That truly defines a team, the way that they handle adversity. This year just seems that they can't find that same magic, and now we're seeing the problems really get elevated compared to what it was last year. The Vikings had a lot of problems last year, but they got washed away by what their record was. And now
totally
we're seeing it all. And now we're seeing it all come crashing down.
Yeah, defense, they've been lacking in the defensive department, haven't been able to correct that. I mean, Kirk Cousins has still been fantastic. Obviously, Justin Jefferson picking up the injury now.
And that's the crazy thing too, is that Jettas and Kirk were both on record-setting paces too, and now here we are. Jefferson's hurt. You're gonna see more Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne, which I'm gonna love. I'm a big Jordan Addison guy. Before, like during the fantasy drafts, I was like, all right, where is Jordan Addison? I need to pick him up. And then I actually made a trade in a dynasty league. Sorry, a little off topic, but I made a trade in a dynasty league right before the first week, and I traded Jordan Addison and I think a second round pick or something for Devonta Smith. And what we call it, man. This is great. I got a great piece because I had Jordan Addison just sitting on my bench, and Lord knows if I'm actually gonna ever start him, but he ended up becoming a great wide receiver too. I'm gonna love to see what he does with the Vikings, and maybe if Kirk's still the quarterback next year. But we'll see what happens with that. But all in all, Vikings are done.
The only thing I will say is it's such a weak division outside of the Lions. If they can do damage in the remaining games against the Packers and Bears, but I just don't see them getting into that point because there's a lot of teams in the NFC that I think are in better off position now, considering their starts, and I think you'll see a lot of teams like that were there last year returning to the playoffs. I'll let it rip with the final disappointing team. You mentioned though what they're gonna do with Kirk will be interesting. Whether they move him this year or next year is or let him walk.
Said that I think I saw a report either last week or right before this past week or after Sunday saying that they weren't gonna move him. I don't think.
I guess it all depends on how things go and what the asking price for him could obviously end up being. I mean, hey, if it gets to the point where the price is right, I'm sure they'll be willing to make a move. But what team would be willing to do that?
Yeah,
at what point?
But the problem is that if you send a quarterback, I don't even know how to really word it, but like, you send a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, how, as the team that's receiving him, how do you
implement him like into the game plan, like get him to learn the playbook?
Yeah, because Kirk is you're so in tune to one playbook, and I gotta learn a whole other playbook like that basically. And we saw it with Baker Mayfield last year, and he got signed to the Rams like however many days before their game, and he ended up leading them to a win, which was freaking baller. But that's one of those outlier cases that those types of things happen. Whereas I don't know if it would be the same result for Kirk, and Lord knows where Kirk would even get sent to at that point too. Does he get sent to a team that is still kind of in the running and could see a change at quarterback, or do you dump him to a team like the Patriots that aren't going to be in the running, and the Patriots are just looking for a guy to have for next year?
Yeah, I think the landing spots there would be interesting, but again, like the Jets are a team that very well, teams are in the hunt. If a team is in the hunt, I just don't see it ever working out, like you said, because it's just in terms of how do you transition like that. But a team looking to move for him now, I would just say just wait until he's a free agent, because then, what I'm saying, or wait till like the asking price is going to be lower than it is in this season. So I mean,
yeah, and if you send him to a team that's potentially contending, like we were just saying, that's just seems like it's more harmful than Baker with the Rams last year, because the Rams weren't going to make the playoffs, and you just tell your guy to go out there and just have some fun and sling it around, and you kind of need to do that more with some of these young quarterbacks too. Especially if you're like the Panthers or like the Bears or something. You're like, you know what? We might not be good this year, but don't feel any pressure. Just go out there and freaking have fun.
Yeah, get experience.
Don't think too much. You're just here to learn, and everything's going to be a learning curve. Don't think too much into it. We're not going to throw a ton at you. We're just going to. That's why Cam Newton was so successful in those early years with Carolina. They simplified everything down to a T, and they simplified it for Cam Newton. They simplified the playbook, They let him run. They let him just have some fun, and he ended up being the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I think Anthony Richardson with the Colts, it was kind of trending to go towards until obviously the injuries, and that's a tease towards some of the more positive teams, but not in the way that you would think. My final disappointing team, and it's a team that's 4-2 and is going to be a playoff team, but the Buffalo Bills, similar to the Bengals for me, because like this is what like the whole thing is like disappointing is only based off your expectations for a team. There's a lot of teams that have been terrible, but like where your expectations are to where they are now. Again, the Bills are another team where that spark just doesn't seem to be there anymore, or at least it does at times. But for me, it just hasn't been the same Bills team. You've seen the Josh Allen turnover machine again against the Jets opening up, and then the loss to the Jaguars. I mean, they beat the Dolphins. They destroyed the Commanders. They had a really good win over the Raiders, covering big spreads. But then they have this close one with the Giants that I think that if the Giants don't completely mismanage the clock, they win that game. If they don't totally mismanage the clock before the first half, they're a field goal away, and they were obviously in field goal range with the late pass interference penalty. It'd be a 15-14 win as a 15-point underdog. That would have been the true deal for the Giants in that game. And again, it hasn't the same sparkle for me. But then again, Josh Allen's getting older. Can't continue to run him around like that in terms of contact. I think he's dealing with injuries once again, much closer of the NFL season ever is going to. But I don't understand why they can't find a way. I don't know if it's a coaching thing too. With McDermott, I do like McDermott, but it just seems that they just don't have enough edge to really break through and get into that team that everybody wants them to be. I think everybody wants them to be that title contender, but I just don't think they're there, and I think they're getting further and further away from it than they were from being a coin toss away.
Yeah, and the Bills are one of those teams that we were talking about that you kind of don't really know what you're going to get with them sometimes. Like, one game they could put up 48 on Miami, and the next game they can only get 14 on the Giants, but they're still squeaking out a win. And I'm just looking at Josh Allen's stats right now, and even like Josh Allen, you barely even know what you're going to get with him. You have the Jets where he threw 3 interceptions, 236 yards. They only put up 16. Next week, much better week, obviously. 31 for 37, 3 touchdowns. They put up 38. Next week, they have Washington. Or I'll just quickly go through it. Washington, they put up 37, 20 for 32. Touchdown, did have an interception. Miami gave his best game by far. They put up 48, only 4 incomplete passes, 4 touchdowns, 320 yards. Jacksonville, they only put up 20, but he had a pretty good game. 359 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. Then we come to last week against the Giants, and it's not really that great of a game at all. 169 yards, interception, did have 2 touchdowns, but it's kind of the underlying factor of, especially with the Giants too, and how much they suck on prime time.
In general, this year. In general too, it's terrible.
But in prime time, it just seems like they just suck that much. But it's, I don't know what it is. And the other problem too is that now Tre'Davious White's out the entire season. You don't know how, Lord knows how long Matt Milano is going to be out. You still have Von Miller that came back. Still got Ed Oliver, but it's, I don't know. And the rush game too has always been suspect. You don't really know what you're gonna get out of James Cook sometimes, and Damian Harris now is gonna be out for maybe the entire season. Like, he was really doing a ton of work for the Bills anyways, but prayers up for him. He did suffer a pretty bad neck injury, but don't want to trash him too much.
Yeah.
Trash him too much for going down like that, but it's the truth. And sadly that's what it's going to come down to again for the Bills is
how far can Josh Allen take you?
How far can Josh Allen take you? Because you can have him be the world beater that he is in the pass game, but you're going to get a lot of questionable decisions from Josh Allen, especially when it comes to the deep ball. and can you at least counter it with an effective running attack?
I saw a post that said, like, when you're looking at Josh Allen now, the problem with Josh Allen is, and it's a blessing and a curse for Josh Allen. The Josh Allen you're going to get is only as good as the quarterback he's playing, as the team he's playing. So, like, in a sense, playing down a competition. Like, when he plays against Mahomes, when he plays against Trevor Lawrence, when he plays against a Tua in these big games, he lights it up. Plays against Tyrod Taylor, he plays like he's Tyrod Taylor. So I think there's some truth to that early in his career, and I don't know if that's a him thing or if that's a coaching thing, if it's a combination of the two. He never played in a lot of big games in college. He played at Wyoming. He's not, and I'm not saying he's not clutch, but I'm saying, like, in terms of, programs that he's come from, the NFL, it's a any given Sunday type league. Is do they have the right stability there in terms of a team culture that puts him in a position to understand the importance of that and, being able to, really work on it? Because the more he matures in his career, I mean, we know what he is talent-wise. His decision-making process has really not improved. He really out-talents and
I'll counter you with 3 interceptions only since that 3 interception day against the Jets. So we're talking 5 weeks with 3 interceptions. Not great, but he's at least picking up by throwing a ton of tutties. He's got 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. I'll take that any day of the week, especially if you're going to put up 30 plus points and your defense can do the job. But like I said, with the looming injuries and you got old man Von Miller coming all around on the edge, how long will the defense even be able to hold up?
Mm-hmm. And when he does happen to do those turnovers, yes, he make up for touchdowns, yes, but and especially in those moments where it's like you take those risks, like you put the defense on a short field that isn't as reliable as one you would want. In other situations, like that becomes a discussion. But then again, they are 4-2. How bad can things really be? If you're 4-2 is the question. If you're the Bengals at 3-3, how bad can things really be? Because it could be worse. You could be on the flip side of those records. It could be the Bengals could only have 1 win. They might not have beat the Rams in that game. So again, there's a lot of things that could be worse for a couple of teams. The Patriots, though, I don't think things could be much worse for. But those are our disappointing teams so far this season. Now, looking at the positive teams, there's 2 teams that are really well that I thought were going to do very well. I thought were playoff caliber teams. And there's one in there that hasn't achieved anything yet, but have certainly surprised me. And we'll start it off with the Miami Dolphins, the best offensive team in the league. They've been super, super impressive. Mike McDaniel, I think he's just having fun with it at this point. He has so many athletes and so many speed demons at his disposal. Of course, Shane's going to miss some time, but overall, what they've been able to get out of Tua, the vote of confidence McDaniel's given him, and everything. I mean, when he's upright and he's not getting his head slammed onto turf, he's pretty good. He's very good. Yeah. And I think if they continue to keep him upright with the weapons that they have, as long as given those guys stay healthy, they did lose what would be considered like a pre-playoff type matchup to the Bills, but overall, I mean, I think that this Dolphins team is a team that, again, should expect themselves to get to at least an AFC Championship game, and overall have been really impressive and health pending. I think this is a team that down the road should certainly feel like a contender, and I think we should expect to be one.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And the only thing that's really going to stop them is either defense or injuries. And sadly, we just saw this past week Tyreek having a minor injury. Obviously, he got 2 of his concussions from last year. But, they've held up for their end for the most part. They're going to have a really tough contest against the Eagles coming up. But all in all, should be looking pretty well for them, in my opinion, especially with speed demons like Achani and how you even say his name?
It's Devon Achane, I believe, is how it's been.
Whatever. But you got guys like him, Mostert. You're gonna have Jeff Wilson coming back from IR as well. Obviously Tyreek and Waddle. I think that they'll definitely, like I said, if healthy, they will make a run at the AFC Championship. But once you see one of those guys go down, the whole thing's going to implode.
Yeah, because you have to maintain that high level of offense to make up for the defense. But again, they're going to get Jalen Ramsey back as well, too, so maybe that can change things a little bit. I still like a little bit more of a being able to rush with 4 is a big thing. That leads me to my next point with the next team in terms of surprising teams. The Detroit Lions being next up there on the list for me. Again, I expected the Lions to be a good team. Did I expect them to be a Super Bowl contender? No. But I've talked about it in the last podcast. I'll talk about it again here. They meet the criteria. And I don't want to sound like Isaiah Thomas in The Last Dance, but they do. They can rush with 4. Their defense has they have some playmakers on defense that can defend the pass, but they're able to get pressure with 4. They don't have to simulate pressure. They don't have to send a lot of it. They have a guy like Aiden Hutchinson that they can get there with 4. They have a strong O-line, one of the strongest O-lines ranking in the league, with some youth on it as well. Do they protect the passer? They have confidence in the quarterback. They have a veteran quarterback, a quarterback that can make plays. They can beat you in multiple ways offensively. So if you can rush with 4, you have an O-line that can pick up third and shorts but can also protect the passer. You have a quarterback that can get a top 10 quarterback in the league, Jared Goff. So you have a top 10 quarterback. You can get after the quarterback with 4. You have a strong O-line. And you have a strong, again, rushing with 4 is partially with having a strong D-line. And you have a sustainable coaching staff, too. You've had the same system. I don't think teams that are doing it in their first year, but now you've been in the same system for a couple of years now with Dan Campbell. So I think you have sustainability. You can get to the passer with 4. You can protect your quarterback, and you can pick up third and shorts with a strong O-line. Overall, I think that they meet the criteria for a team that, again, health really being the only thing. This is a true Super Bowl contender, at least in my opinion. It sounds crazy to talk about the Lions in that way and Jared Goff in that way, but the eye test for me, along with passing those couple of criteria for me, mean that they mean business.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I'm still not completely sold on the defense. Like you said, they got great playmakers, but I feel like they still have had some games where they're just allowing too many points. They lose to the Seahawks 37-31, and not to knock the Seahawks or anything. That's still a good offense, but I don't think that the Lions should be giving up 37 points to the Seahawks. They gave up 24 to the Panthers. I don't think they should be giving up 24 to the Panthers. Chiefs, different story. They gave up 20 there. And, the Falcons, they gave up 6. Buccaneers last week, they gave up 6. Both of them, oddly enough, 20-6 victories. It's weird, but Packers, they gave up 20 in a game that definitely shouldn't have been ended up being a 2-score game. They had all the momentum, and then all of a sudden they gave up a touchdown and went 3 and out the next drive, and it all looked like it was about to go to hell from there, but they ended up holding on. But that's just one of those games that I feel like definitely shouldn't have gone out of hand. They are only giving up under 20 points per game. Yardage wise, they're putting up almost 100 yards per game. Their differential, so they're averaging 393 per game on offense, and they're giving up about 300 on defense. So they're almost averaging more yards than they're giving up, or a whole 100 yards more than they're giving up. Rushing attack too. They're only giving up 3 yards per carry. They're giving up 65 yards per game. It's pretty solid. And for the most part, they're making sure they're not letting offenses roam all over them. But I just see that Seahawks game, and it just doesn't completely sell me yet. They do have the Ravens this week. I think that they're still gonna. Wait, do they have the Ravens?
They have the Ravens this week on the road.
Yeah, they have the Ravens. Yeah. I think that they'll do a job against the Ravens, mainly because the receiving core for the Ravens is so subpar. I just can't believe that they still haven't found a good receiver for Lamar yet. But I think they'll do fine with that. But I think the real test is when you have the Chargers on the 12th and the Vikings, assuming that Jetta is healthy again. They're going to have the Vikings, Cowboys, and Vikings for the last 3 weeks of the season. But the rest of the season is pretty much going to be a cakewalk because they still have to face the Bears twice. They got the Packers, the Saints, the Broncos.
Yeah,
Raiders.
that Saints game might be the only really mix-up in there after the Chargers.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the Saints will definitely give them a game, but
because it's on the road too. Those road games too, but
yeah. So I think that those last 3 weeks are gonna tell us exactly what the Lions are.
Yeah, overall, of course they got Hendon Hooker too, waiting behind Jared Goff, and then Jared Goff just continues to improve and get better. It's like, oh my goodness, like how do you? I don't know. I didn't really expect. I didn't think Jared Goff was that bad leaving the Rams, but I didn't expect him to ever get to the point where he was this good either, especially after leaving McVay. So, I was really led to believe, and I believe myself, that McVay was a big part for his success and probably did play a part into it. But again, they have a positive turnover differential too, and that's another positive to look at. Any team going wrong, if they have a positive turnover differential, that's always a telling statistic too. One of the last piece of criteria that I want to meet on the Lions there, but. Again, this is another meter stick measuring game. You're trying meter stick game. How do you measure up? And the Ravens are on the road is certainly a matchup that you will look into. To how do you measure up against competition? This is a good game to be able to tell you that. I don't think they have much more to prove, in my opinion. And teams are entitled to their bad losses. Nobody's undefeated anymore, so we'll see. But like you said, if they can, not just win in the shootout, but really have a commanding performance defensively, maybe win even in a low-scoring game. That's one we'll look to, and then we'll close it out. At least my final surprising team, because C.J. Stroud has been so good. So that's why that was my tease there with the Anthony Richardson thing and the comparison to Cam Newton. Richardson was looking great, and if the Colts had a healthy AR and they had a over 500 record right now, I would tell you right now that the Colts were shocking to me doing that with Anthony Richardson, but. Now that he's going to be done for the season, the other surprising team for me has been the Texans, and C.J. Stroud has been super impressive, beating my Saints last week. Good Lord, I don't think that should have happened. I guess I really don't think that should happen.
No, man, CJ, that whole Texans team, I don't know what happened, but they are on something else right now. I love the Texans right now. C.J. Stroud, amazing, and I said this on Fumblerooski as well. It's a matter of C.J. Stroud isn't doing too much. He's doing enough to get the job done. He's making the smart plays. He didn't give up. He didn't get picked off for the first 5 weeks of the season, and he finally got picked off last week. But it didn't matter because they got the win. And it's just, obviously, yeah. A couple shaky performances with the Ravens and the Colts, and then you come out and just absolutely dog whip the Jaguars and Steelers. And I'm a big C.J. Stroud guy. They have the line to protect him. They got young weapons that are definitely going to end up amounting to something. Dameon Pierce hasn't been fantastic, but he's definitely a pretty solid running back. The receiver, I can't think of
Tank Dell, baby. Tank Dell's been good for them.
Yeah, Tank Dell. He's going to be really good, too. Just a rookie as well.
Will Anderson, they got.
That's going to be a combination to look for in the future.
I mean, you got 2 top 5 draft picks. Looks like both are going to pay off. Will Anderson, the Bama edge rusher, and then you have obviously Stroud's played well. And overall, I think that they truthfully have, they've built something there. I think that D'Amico Ryans. It's going to be a weak comp. I mean, having Trevor Lawrence is one thing, but I don't. The AFC South, not a traditionally strong conference, but yeah, they've shocked me. I love what they're doing. They play real hard-nosed defense, and D'Amico Ryans has brought that there for them. And the big thing with rookie quarterbacks is not making a mistake, right? So Stroud just hasn't been making mistakes, and that's the biggest thing with a rookie quarterback. He's throwing for a lot of yards, but he's not making a ton of mistakes. And if you can minimize the mistakes with a rookie quarterback and you play hard-nosed defense, you're going to be in a lot of close games. Now, whether you come out on top of all of them, I don't know. But if you're 500 right now and you're a win or 2 away from sneaking into a playoff spot with a rookie quarterback, wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't rule it out either.
So I'll finalize that for the 3 teams that have shocked us. Now we're going to do our 3-team pick'em here, leading into the week. So Chris, I'll let you lead it off with your first game that we're gonna take a look at. Your lock, one of your 3 locks of the week. Here is where we're going into week 7 of the NFL.
My lock I can't believe that this line even exists. No offense to you, but I got Jags +1.
The only thing is, if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play in that game,
What was that?
if Trevor Lawrence is injured for that game, that's the only one that that's the only thing that I think that changes that line.
Mm.
So that's what it
Yeah,
tells.
no,
That's what it
definitely
says to
does,
me.
but yeah, I can agree with that. I don't know. I just feel like the Jags are just definitely a better team than the Saints, in my opinion. Whether Trevor Lawrence is, well, if he's injured, then yeah, it's gonna definitely make a freaking difference. But assuming that Trevor Lawrence is healthy, then I would take the Jags 9 times out of 10.
I even as a Saints fan, I agree with you there. Me personally, for my lock of the week, Baltimore's favored by 3 at home. I'm taking the Lions. Obviously we're only going against the spread here, but Lions +3. I'm taking the Lions against the spread. I'm taking the Lions money line and spread. I think this is a Lions team. They're 3-0 on the road this season. I think they got it. I think this is it's a statement game. That's my lock of the week. Yeah, so you and me can both agree with the Lions or Ravens there, that being my number 1 slot. So we'll get it to another game now too. So the Lions being there, I personally wouldn't touch Jags Saints. Thursday night's gross. I wouldn't touch a favorite, but it's also a 1-point spread. I'm not touching it because you don't know if Lawrence is going to be healthy or not. Lawrence comes out. I mean, you could, if you wanted to do it now, and you take the Jags expecting Lawrence to be healthy, with the Saints being favored by 1. But then again, that tells me the bookies know that he's either not going to be healthy or they just know something I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. When I originally saw it, I was like, really? And now that you say the Trevor Lawrence injury, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. But even with Trevor Lawrence is going to play. But even with health being a factor, I feel like that the Jags being the underdog is just a little ridiculous, in my opinion. I don't know. It's, you take the spread and hope that the Jags just outright win, and you're just going to expect them to outright win. But, like we said before, it's any given Sunday. So
yeah, we got a couple of good matchups in the league. I mean, Chiefs, Chargers, that's going to be at Arrowhead. Dolphins, Eagles, of course, the Eagles at home. They're favored by 2.5. 49ers, Vikings on Monday night. Again, primetime games, it's a 7-point spread there. But then again, I just don't know. We just really don't know what we're getting out of the Minnesota Vikings at this point. You get some divisional matchups this week. Giants only being 2.5-point dogs to the Commanders. You got quite the spread here with the Patriots and Bills, Browns, Colts up there too. Browns only being favored by 2.5, but on the road, so of course home field traditionally worth 3. If I'm gonna give you my second lock of the week, it's in Foxborough. Buffalo's 8.5-point favorites. Do I think that the Bills go off on I would take the Patriots to cover in that game. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I'm crazy for doing that. But if Josh Allen's going to play down to competition, I can see that. Again, how long? I mean, Bill's going to do something at some point, right? Like, something's going to happen. Can I bet on one of the worst teams in football that's hasn't even won a game at home yet this season? Do I do that? And it only being an 8.5-point spread, it probably should be double digits. Again, I would roll Patriots here. I've been betting on the last couple weeks, thinking they're going to respond, and I don't know. But I'm not saying. I can't believe I'm saying that's a lock. Maybe I should take that bet. You know what? I'm going to roll the Patriots covering the spread. I don't think they'll win the game, but they will cover the spread in Foxborough this week against the Bills.
Well, when I read these numbers for you, you'll probably think that it's extremely a lock at this point. So, Spitz, Brady left. The Bills are 6-1. The 2020 game, they won 24-21. That was in Buffalo. And then in New England, they won 38-9. And then Max rookie year, obviously the Pats won that one 14-10. And then in Foxborough, the Bills won 33-21. More often than not, besides like 2 games, the Bills have won by 2 scores at the very least, and 2 of these games have been by either 30 points or 29 points. The 30 points was the playoff game. They lost by 29 in that 2020 game I was just talking about. Every other game has been 2-score games besides the Pats win. Every single game besides 2.
I mean, does a Bill Belichick coach team go 0-4 at home? I don't know. Maybe that's probably a terrible lock, but I'll let you. We both agreed.
And they've also lost the last 4 to the Bills.
Yeah, maybe we're just looking for history to break up here. So we agreed on Lions, Ravens, both taking the Lions in that game. You got the Jags over the Saints. I'm taking the Patriots to at least cover the spread against the Bills. I'll let you wrap this up with
the Patriots.
Oh no, I was taking the Patriots. I just don't think they're going to go 0-4 at home, and
no,
it should be higher than 8.5. I think.
Yeah, definitely a little weird in that sense, but I would still take the Bills spread in that sense, regardless.
I'll let you finish up with your final lock, and then we'll just wrap this up. I think this is going down in history as the longest podcast that we've had on the Reefers Rundown. So,
yeah, it's funny. We keep talking about the Fumble Rooski podcast, and how we're trying to keep it down to either an hour or lower, and we've been doing a good job of it. But there's always the times where you can't get past it. But my third lock, I am gonna go with Washington 2.5. Over the Giants. I think that the Commanders are just going to come out and pound away on the Giants, assuming that assuming that is Daniel Jones still out, or
even if he isn't back, I mean, I'll take a peek here at the news. Even if he isn't back, I'd still be taking them because Sam Howell has looked good. I think even when Daniel Jones is healthy, Sam Howell has looked good, and I don't see any news particularly on Daniel Jones. I'll take a look at the injuries here for him.
Looking at the Giants page right now, he's listed as questionable, still with the neck injury, limited participant in today's practice. Yeah, like you said, regardless if Daniel Jones plays or not, I kind of just threw that out there just to be nice. But regardless if he plays or not, I think the Commanders are going to be covering the spread. I don't think the Giants are going to be winning, especially the way that you saw that the Giants played on Sunday night against the Bills. Commanders have looked a little better on defense. I don't know. I just don't.
Sam Howell surprised me a little bit. Commanders are one of the teams that I considered one of those surprising teams. But yeah, I'd take 2.5. I'd take the Commanders in that sense as well, too.
I think the counterpoint would be if the Giants were to get to Sam Howell. Sam Howell is the most sacked quarterback in the league right now, surprisingly. I don't know if you knew that. Somehow is not the most sacked quarterback in the league.
Derek Carr's been hit you send more than 4 guys at Derek Carr, he's automatic. The blitz pickup and oh god, is it bad? I can't watch it. I can't watch it. You send 5, you send any more than 4 against Derek Carr, automatically on the ground in 2 seconds, free hit. There's no blitz pickup. There's nothing. I don't know what it is, but yeah, no, I knew it wasn't Derek Carr, but they have one of the worst O-lines in the league. But yeah, the Commanders obviously up there too.
Yeah, and so the counterpoint would be if the Giants were to get to Sam Howell, which they've proven that they can. I don't know how much of the Sunday night game that you saw, but so Josh Allen didn't get sacked once. He hasn't been sacked for the last 2 games now. And the reason why he didn't get sacked so many freaking times on Sunday night was because of his legs. And there was more than enough times that Josh Allen had to get out of the pocket because the pocket just collapsed on him so quickly. The Giants were getting to him at a rapid pace. They were sending guys, and I couldn't believe that Josh Allen was getting out as fast as he was able to because it just seemed like it was an ongoing thing. It was going on pretty much the entire game. And that was a huge reason why the Giants were able to hold the Bills to 14 points. Do I think it'll happen again if they were to face the Bills again? No. But, you see the way that they played the Bills, and you think that maybe they can do the same thing to Washington, especially with the way that Washington protects Sam Howell.
Or doesn't protect for that.
No, especially with the stat that I threw out there. But regardless, if they can get to Sam Howell, that would be the counterpoint to my lock there. But I'm still going to stick with it regardless.
Fair enough, Chris. Well, appreciate you joining me. Sorry for taking up almost 2 hours here.
Probably the longest episode ever.
That certainly is one of the longer episodes, but it was a pleasure having you on. Probably, hopefully, it won't be the last time. I'm not going to say not even hopefully, it will not be the last time. Like I said, I appreciate you hopping on. I'll drop all your socials in the description throughout too, and once I have this all edited up, it'll be out there tomorrow. And again, I got to put the phone number somewhere in here too at some point to call into the show, because we do want your voicemails in the future. I'm actually going to check on my phone real quick. Maybe I missed on one. Maybe we have to.
I told one of my buddies to leave a message or something, but I don't know if any of them did.
Again, I got to work towards making this a live function, but nothing in the voicemail box. There's a text line too, so when I do get the number out there, shared that a couple times. Actually, I'll pull it up right now. 508-657-4717. How you can reach the Rufus Rundown with text messages. We've done text message lines before with certain takes, so I'll throw it out there with the images, and then of course the voicemail line too. And then if there is ever a point where I am recording, of course I can look at stuff in that regard too. But again, Chris, thanks for joining me. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me. We're going to have to get you on the Fumblerooski podcast now.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I'll be linking that down in the description for you guys to check out as well. But for my buddy Chris Costich and for all his friends over at the Fumblerooski podcast as well too, myself, Luke Spur, signing off.